Well, the Astros are nearing the timeline for arbitration offers, and they have a way to get under the CBT. But will that one player be willing to move and go elsewhere? Let's talk about this. And another Alvarez from Cuba coming through the system. Let's start right now.
Jainel Diaz, this is Locked On Astros.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Astros, your daily Astros podcast. Here are your hosts, Eric the Man Huysman and Brett H-Town Wheelhouse Chancey.
We are Locked On Houston Astros. We hope that you join us for a daily Locked On Astros podcast. My name is Eric Huysman. You can find me on X at Eric Talks Astros. You can find the show at Locked On Astros, your team every day. Brett, where can I find you at?
They can find me at H-Town Wheelhouse on X, Instagram, and TikTok. They can find me at Stros411, Stros with a Z at Instagram and Facebook and on X. And they can find me at Back to the Bullpen on X, on Instagram, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, and YouTube. You know what? Pretty much anywhere you get a podcast, you can find me. You can find Eric. You can find us anywhere. So thanks for tuning in because I'm always positive, always Stros.
Guys, thank you for making us your first listen on Apple, Odyssey, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Go and check us out. Today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel's. New customers can bet up to $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. I know the Texans are facing the Chargers, and Chargers fans are saying they basically have a bye in the first round. So hopefully the Texans use that as bulletin board material to go ahead and take care of business. But we don't care about that. Well, we do, but we care about baseball. I know this is the time of year that it's like, okay, it's almost spring training. It's almost a rodeo. I love the rodeo because I like going to the rodeo, but when the rodeo comes around, that's when it's time for spring training. So Brett, there's still a lot of time for us everydayers, and it's people to listen to us, become part of the podcast. And I'm excited about this. There's still some moves to be made. There's the CBT. The Astros are at about projected a estimated $244 million. And the CBT is 241. So the Astros have some work to do. Last year, Jim Crane basically said, "Oh, I'm not going to go over the CBT," and then he went out and said, "You know what? We need a closer. Let's go out and get Josh Hader." Right. And then he went over and put himself not only over the first luxury tax threshold, but over the second luxury tax threshold. So if you're a second time. If you go over it the second time, especially back-to-back season, the penalty is a little bit steeper. So Jim Crane wants to do everything he can to go ahead and get underneath that. We'll talk about that in a second. But he also wants to bring out a winning team. He wants to put out a winning product. He said as long as he's the owner, he wants to make sure this the window stays open. So Brett, before we get into all that, Thursday is a big day. We got 8 players that are going up for arbitration. And this is the day where you exchange all the numbers. And I have the numbers here, but I know we traded one of the players away and on Kyle Tucker. Then we non-tendered or 2 of them and Penn Murphy and Jose Urquidy. Yeah. But the other names are some big times numbers. But overall, there's $44.8 million in on the line here.
Yeah, it's quite a bit. Fromber, which is your largest, Mauricio Dubon, who's expected to get about 4.6 million. Jeremy Pena. It's just some of those guys that you're looking at, Eric. That it really stands to show like where the Astros will be. Now, one of the things that I think I knew about it, but I was reminded of it in Chandler Rome's article, because there are a lot of things in his article today that you and I are going to be feeding from. He does an excellent job there at The Athletic. And he talked about how the CBT, and I think you may have told me this before, but they don't count the CBT numbers until the end of the season.
Right.
So you can make moves now. You can make moves at the trade deadline. And as long as you're under the tax threshold at the end of the season, like you could be over it by 8 million now and be under it by 2 million at the end, and you would be counted at that 2 million spot. So that's something I don't know if our listeners were aware of. I had heard that, but I had forgotten it. 'Cause I was like, I thought I'd heard that before, but that's a good reminder. I think Framber Valdez he's not going to get extended. I think he's too far into his contract, and I don't see an extension for Framber Valdez. The reason why he's going to get an arbitration deal, 21 plus million probably this year, is because Jim Crane's never signed a $200 million extension. He signed an $85 million extension with Lance McCullers Jr., and then a $64 million extension with, I believe, with Christian Javier. But it would take a lot more than that. And you've also got guys like Hunter Brown, who you could maybe extend. But he hired Scott Boras. And one of the things that a great point that Chandler made, you don't hire Boras to get you a long-term extension. You hire Boras because you're going to get free agency soon and you want a massive contract. So I think, though, Eric, that once you see where they are, I think they're going to continue to go to try to deliver Presley in a trade. But these exchange deadline arbitration deals basically is the team telling the player why they're not worth as much as a player thinks they're worth. And then an arbiter, a neutral party, saying, okay, this is a fair deal. This is what you're getting. So whether the Astros agree to it or not, it's the arbiter's decision to be made. And Mike Stanton's talked about it many times. It can be very demoralizing for a player, for a club to tell him you don't deserve an extra $2 or $3 million because this is why. So,
well, just for the audience, most players actually don't go to arbitration. So what happens Thursday is the player and the team, they both swap numbers. And if they go ahead and agree to avoid arbitration, then they don't have to do that. I believe the hearings are typically in February. But
true. Okay, true. Yeah, you're right. Because and I didn't mean to sound like I mixed those up. Yes, the exchange date is Thursday, the deadline, and then the actual, if they go to arbitration and they don't agree. Thank you for clearing that up, because I kind of minced my words a little bit. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah. So like Framber Valdez, the prediction is he's going to make 17.8. So the Astros may go in and say, oh, we think you're only worth 15 million because in 2023, you're the second half of the season, you weren't that good. And then Framber Valdez will be like, but bro, in 2024, did you see what I did? I carried the rotation, bro.
That's cap.
Yeah. And so he'll come out and say, I think I'm worth $21 million. And so the team could also say, well, what we could do is we could buy out your last year arbitration, and then we can go ahead and go and do extension. We can go and give you that $21 million you want, and then go ahead and do $24 million. But with what all the other pitchers are getting this offseason, I think that he's looking for at least $27 million per season. And so he's probably going to see what the free agent market is going to get. So I don't think that Framber Valdez is going to get it. But Jeremy Pena, I know that in that article, Diaz also is a name that possibly could come up at some point for extension. But I think players, with the way today's market is, they're kind of hesitant to do long-term deals.
Well,
their team, they're very they're based on market value, and it's basically pays them a lot more than they're making at the time.
Well, and I think this to speak on this, because you mentioned Diaz's name. He does seem to be the most likely deal to be done. And I think there's several caveats to this. I think number one, the catching position is a premium. To have a power potential, an average, get an on base guy at the catching position. He's shown flashes of brilliance behind the plate, although last year he declined defensively. He apparently has been working on that on the offseason. I've checked in with his people this offseason. They said he's been working extra hard on his catching. So we look for that to improve this year. And he is a guy that probably won't catch his whole career. He probably could move to first base here in 3 or 4 seasons. You have Christian Walker for the next 3 years. So getting an extension for Yainer Diaz would be a lot less expensive, I think, at this point, because he's not a premium name in a premium market, but he's giving you next to premium production at the plate. So that might work in the Astros' favor. Yainer Diaz really likes it here. Yainer Diaz gets along with Joe Espada. And so that's where I think, that's why I think there's a possibility of that happening sooner rather than later.
I think we could continue this Yainer Diaz in tomorrow's show. But Brett, next we're going to talk about Ryan Pressly, how I think he's the key to possibly getting to underneath the CBT this year. There's some other names that Chandler Rome threw out that you could possibly trade. If not now, at some point during the season to get under CBT, but we'll talk about this next on the Locked On Astros podcast.
Hey, y'all, thank y'all for tuning in to Locked On Astros. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. You know that I love going to live events. I went to a couple Rockets games this year. Eric has gone to concerts, and we have all used Game Time. And you've heard me talk about Game Time, and I continue to tout America's best ticket app that is out there. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB when your first purchase, and you'll get $20 off. Terms do apply. It makes it easier to get the tickets you want with their new feature, Game Time Picks. The feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time securing or searching through thousands of seats. I know that I've been looking on there, and look, I didn't even wait. I waited until the event happened. I didn't have to plan it out months in advance. I did this with comedy shows. I've done this with Rockets tickets. So right now, take the guesswork out of buying tickets, download the app, the Game Time app, use a promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
Hey guys, thank you for making us your first listen on Apple, Odyssey, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Go ahead and check us out. Speaking of Game Time, I'm not going to be on the podcast tomorrow because thanks to Game Time, I'm going to see the Book of Mormon. I've actually seen it before, but I'm taking my fiance to go watch it. It's actually a good play. So it's Brett, if you ever get a chance, go check it out too. So.
Well, you know what?
I'm not. Nothing gets Mormons, but I'm not. But it's a very good play.
Well, yeah. But I will say this. I'm actually not a completely uncultured swine. I have seen Fiddler on the Roof live. I've actually seen Mary Poppins live. And coming from a guy who hated musicals growing up, like if you get to see him in person, phenomenal. So if your significant other wants to go somewhere, go to Game Time and it's the perfect, do it not during the holidays. Why? Because they're not expecting it. See, we're giving you life hacks, men and women, to take your significant other to go see something before the real theater starts in baseball. How do you like that for transition?
Yeah, sometimes your significant other holds some pull over what you do in your career. Sometimes you have a no trade clause in your contract, and sometimes
I hope you have a no trade clause.
Sometimes your wife has a lot of ties in the Houston area. I know that Alex Bregman's wife did have a lot of ties in the Houston area, but when you're seeking the Benjamins, you go out there and get the Benjamins. Right. But Ryan Pressly has a no trade clause, and he is so far. I don't know if he's been approached with any trades by the Astros, but we know that his wife is definitely from this area, and he seems to be pretty comfortable in this area. So he has a no trade clause, so he has to approve any trade that the Astros 100%. Do. So the Astros have been definitely actively shopping him, and he has a what is it, 14.7 million salary, I believe. Is that what it is? Or 14 million salary.
Okay. Yeah.
Ryan Presley.
14 million. Yeah. So Ryan Presley, you're right, would have to he would have to want the trade. His wife would have to want it. Both their kids were born here, from what I understand, or they've been raised here so far.
Yeah.
And I mean, being when your wife is from Houston, that's kind of a big deal. That's why I was surprised Correa went to Minnesota, Eric, because I didn't think his wife, who's from Texas, would want to move to Minnesota. I know, no offense from people in Minnesota, but it would be like you moved from your hometown to go live somewhere else. And at the end of the day, Ryan Presley, if he can be assured that he's going to take on a closer role and be on a competitive team, he'll do it. It's a lot easier said than done. Honestly, you could move a Caratini contract. You could move Dubon. You really can't move Myers or McCormick, but those two, Caratini or Dubon, would be contracts that people would not mind taking on. It would take both of those to almost equal what Presley would take off the books. But there are other ways to do this. I just don't know who out there who's looking for a closer, because I don't know if you saw the Mariners have been in talks with trading Luis Castillo to the Orioles. Right. Luis Castillo, he has a full no trade clause. And if they do that, does that open the door for them to get someone like Alex Bregman? I mean, we are waiting to see what we do with Presley. And I think that is what is holding back the Astros on any other significant moves.
I've also seen reports that that Arenado would accept a trade to the Red Sox, and I also seen reports that the Red Sox are willing to trade for the St. Louis closer. I can't think of his name off the Hisley or something like that, but their closer. So there are definitely a lot of closing targets out there, and I think that Presley, I think everybody's just kind of waiting for the big names to go off the market. That's what, especially with Alex Bregman, he's kind of holding up a lot of names. And so yeah. I don't think it's the fact that nobody wants Presley. I think it's the fact that how much are the Astros going to take of that contract, and what do they have to give up? I think in this situation, the Astros are definitely looking for a young outfielder, somebody that they can definitely play this year. I know that we're talking about Alek Thomas yesterday from the Diamondbacks. That would be a perfect match, but at the same time, he's been given a lot of chances the past 3 years. He hasn't had success at
Eric,
level.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I thought you were done with your comment there. You and I spoke about Alek Thomas, and here's a kid that had a lot of promise and just has not produced. That's why you see Profar, who is out there trying to command a 2 or 3 year deal, because he's finally kind of come into his own. He's a late blooming major leaguer. Heck, for late blooming major leaguers, Christian Walker is a late bloomer. I mean, it's the last 3 years that he's really caught fire and shown his worth and his value on the field and at the plate. So the Astros, bottom line, if they're going to get any left field help outside of the organization, number one, Presley has got to be dealt. Number two, they're not going to go out and get a big name. And number three, it may not be Presley that ends up going. It may be, and the only reason why I would move Caratini is if I knew someone like Salazar was ready to step up, because, and be that, because he would be your full-time backup, and you would be taking a hit, I think, in the catching department, because I think Caratini is very, very valuable.
And there's some other catching prospects down the road. I know we've talked about Yannick, but he's not ready at all.
Yeah, they like what he's doing. He's got the defensive and he's got the hit tool. So, I mean, he is a kid that when he's prime and ready, he will get all the opportunities. Because, we talked to him, Eric, and what did he say? What did he say his most fun thing to do was? You remember?
Right. No.
To throw runners out.
Okay.
To throw runners out. Remember, because you asked him that question. You said, what do you enjoy most about catching? He said, I love when I throw runners out. And the kid's got a cannon and he's hit the ball. It'll be interesting to see, though, in left field, Eric. You could see I saw Quincy Hamilton's name mentioned. Quincy Hamilton's kind of an outlier. You know, he can maybe get a shot here or there. There's some guys that will come up, Pedro Leon, to help out, but they're not going to be the answers for the Astros that they need right now.
And something tomorrow definitely you can talk about, Brett, is Melton. Is he going to be given a shot out of spring training? Will he have to wait till June? That's something you can definitely talk about. But guys, thank you for making us your first listen on Apple, Odyssey, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Go and check us out.
That's right. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. And no matter if the Texans play at 4 o'clock or not, I know you're going to be there in front of your TV cheering on the good guys. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Visit the website today and check it out. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Hey guys, thank you for making Locked On Astros podcast your first listen every day. Go ahead and subscribe to us. Go and check us out on your Amazon Fire TV stick. All you have to do is just go ahead and download the free channels app and just go and search baseball, search Astros, and you can watch Brett and I on your big screen TV. If you want to do that, you can watch us on your small screen TV. You can watch us on your black and white TV if you still have one of those.
Oh, easy, Tiger. Hey, you know what? When I do get that 85-inch TV that I'm going to get this year, I just know I'm going to show y'all what it looks like on the 85.
That's your New Year's resolution?
No, I've got other resolutions that are way more important than that, but that's something I've always wanted, an 85-inch screen TV. I think I can make it happen in 2025.
Okay. All right. My New Year's resolutions give up my bachelor's life. So that's my New Year's resolution, if that's what it is. So anyway, the Astros New Year's resolution is try to get underneath the CBT, and they may have to wait till the trade deadline. Let's say they're maybe not doing as well. They may end up trading somebody like Framber Valdez at the trade deadline. They may have to trade some other assets. I know Jake Myers is somebody a lot of people say, well, let's go ahead and trade him. We don't want him anymore. Well, you have to have somebody else that wants him in order to trade for him. So the Astros have a lot of outfielders, but nobody really stands out as a everyday guy. So we'll have to see what happens in spring training. And Brett, I think this would be a good idea for you to kind of harp on tomorrow. We'll Melton, we'll Pedro Leon.
And I'll talk about that because I think there are guys coming out of camp that have a chance. I think there are guys that we're gonna have to wait on. I'm even gonna talk about who I think coming out of camp is going to be in our rotation, and then who's going to be competing for that as well. But Eric, look, dude, I'm excited for this season for a bunch of reasons. Number one, because I have no clue how it's going to go. Like, number one, kind of the mystery is kind of fun after being years and years of us knowing what was going to happen. Like, oh, the Astros are going to the ALCS. Oh, the Astros are going to compete for the World Series. Now, can they go to the ALCS? They can. Can they compete for the World Series? They can. But this year's unlike any other, Eric. I mean, we are dealing with losing 2 superstars in one season. And if this club sustains that loss and we get a couple more pieces and this club charges to the ALCS and we get back, man, it will be very, very sweet to everybody that's a fan of the Houston Astros.
Yeah, definitely. I don't expect any big names. I know that there's a lot of talk about Santander there, but I think that it's more.
Yeah, I think that ship is sailing.
I think that Roflo even talking about it on Baseball Network, MLB Network today. But he was just saying that it's what the Astros want, but also they don't want to go over the luxury tax threshold. So it's a situation where they want, but they can't have. And so it's just like the forbidden fruit. They just can't go out there and get that at the point. They know they need it, but the Astros have what, $36 million tied to two players that aren't even playing with the
Just
Astros right now.
wasting.
Yes, and so the Astros are just going to have to play with something. Find some cheap players out there, like the Padres did with Profar when he only played last year for $1 million. If the Astros can find a cheap find like that, some outfielder that can play for $1 million and have that production like Profar did last year, that'll be the best. Now, the Astros are on the 15th of January, are expected to sign a young Alvarez. He's only 15 years old, so don't expect him to make it.
15 or 16? Is he?
I've seen reports say he's 15 or 16, so I don't know.
15 or 16. It's like nobody knows. No offense,
Yes,
but sometimes we don't know. I mean, we
you remember that movie when the guy's like he looks like he's 20 and he pulls out the thing that says,
no, dude, I'm telling you, I have seen I've seen it in select ball. You know, we go to a tournament and we're like, can we check that kid's birth certificate? We know some kids are big, but we also do know, but this kid Alvarez.
Oh, he is 16. Yeah.
16 years old. So Eric, scouts give him a 60 grade on hit and power with a 55 overall grade. They say he's one of the most talented hitters during this signing period and expected to get like a $2 million bonus. This kid's good, and he's a lefty. Do you know that I believe Frances Romero said that he
was number 3 on his list.
Yeah. Well, what he says is he said scouts find his body and skills at that age similar to those of Kyle Tucker or Paul O'Neill.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty Paul O'Neill, Kyle Tucker. Those are quality baseball players to be compared to.
And he has a good speed, good defense. He could possibly play the outfield, possibly center field. He he can possibly develop into a good outfield. Good power. And so he's still young. He actually left in Cuba in 2021 with his father. And so now, so he's just 16. So we'll see what happens over the development. But this is the depending on who you trust. But this is like the outside of a couple of the guys that are guaranteed bets in the major leagues. This was the third best prospect international guy.
Yeah.
And the Astros got him. And I think it has a lot to do with the names that have come to the Astros farm system and their scouting system. So this is a big deal. It's not going to be instant impact. This is not going to be Yuli Gurriel type instant impact, but this is going to be somebody that you can look at down the road and say maybe about 4 years down the road, maybe you could start looking at him down to AAA.
So After Wolf Craig makes an interesting point. He says, wasn't Pedro Leon a can't miss? Hey, look, we talked to his instructors. We knew that his hit tool was not the best, and we reported on that on this show. I don't know anybody else that reported it. His bat, he was not a natural hitter. He was projected to be a 5-tool guy. He got a massive, I believe, like a $4 or $5 million signing bonus. Okay, so yes, these guys don't always hit, Eric. I mean, do we need to go into all the Astros top picks that didn't produce? You know what I'm saying? Prospects are basically one stat line away from being,
and it's going to help the Astros down the road. So I know they also signed they're projected to sign a dark horse starting pitcher. I don't have his name in front of me, but this is the Astros we have a lot more that we could talk about, but I wanted to save a little bit for what Brett can talk about tomorrow. But what questions do y'all have about the Houston Astros? Do they have enough to do what it takes to, like a lot of people, including Robert Flores, think that the Rangers are going to be a much better team in 2025. What do you think? Yes, I put Brett on timeout. Definitely I put Brett on timeout. So I know that the Rangers offense, I was watching something, I think it was Bleacher Report. They put out the top 5 offenses. And one of the teams, top 5 teams, was the Rangers. do you agree with them that they're a top 5 offense?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good deal. Yeah, sorry.
I didn't know if it was my internet
Well,
or not.
no, it was we have all Apple products in this house, and so my son put his AirPods in and I think connected to it, and he didn't even realize it, and then I couldn't get it back. But what I was trying to say, Eric, and is prospects. Okay, no, when we sign guys like Framber Valdez, Luis Garcia, Jose Urquidy, when we sign these guys, I mean, even Jose Altuve at $15,000, the Astros have done a very good job. I mean, and if you look at the homegrown talent that we have compared to the league, I think most of our guys hit. So I'm going to trust our evaluators on the guys that they get right versus what they get wrong.
Yeah. So we don't know. I think a lot of how successful the Astros are going to do is what they're going to do with the outfield. Who rises up, and in spring training, will Pedro Leon finally show up? Will Jake Myers or Chas McCormick actually have not just a good season, have a great season? Because you're replacing. Yes, we could say Christian Walker is a much better upgrade than anything they had last year at first base, but you lost a superstar in right field. You need somebody to replace them. These are all the conversations we can continue to have all off season on the Locked On Astros podcast. Guys, go and make us your first listen. Apple, Odyssey, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts, go and check us out. And we appreciate each and every one of y'all. And we will see you tomorrow. And Brett, what do we always say?
Go Stros.
What? I couldn't hear you, Brett.
Shut up. Hey, we're less than 100 away from 13,000. Help us get there. Help us get there. I mean, we are so close. So close.